What is going on, Bucs fans, NCFP fans? Evan Wanish here, back at you again. Another video talking about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And today we are finishing our positional review for the 2023 season. We've gone through each position group, each unit, and reviewed what they did in the 2023 season. Also talked about what the future may look like for that position. Joined alongside me for every single review, which if you haven't checked them out, you can go check them out on the YouTube channel. They are all uploaded now. But joining me for the final one, I want to thank him for joining me for all of these. It is Mr. James Hill, aka Bucs Nation. You know him, some love him. James, how you doing tonight?
Good. I can't wait for this to come out just in time for the 2024 regular season. It should be a lot of fun. Look, the secondary, this is going to be, I kid. This is going to be a lot of moving pieces, Evan. I think that's kind of safe to say. Um, man, obviously Antoine Winfield's the big name that we're going to talk about, but there's also a lot of other guys in there that this could be one of the most fluid position groups out of the entire thing. Right. I think that's a pretty safe thing to say. And I'm talking, both corner and safety. You could have a couple of new starters in that group, Evan. So going to be interested to dive into this and get, the thoughts and opinions on it.
This is one group where I could see it looking quite similar to how it did in 2023. At the same time, I could see it looking very different because there is a chance that this team moves on from a guy like Carlton Davis, right? There is unlikely, but there's an outside chance they could move on from Jamal Dean. It's not impossible. I would say that would be more likely a trade would be involved there rather than just cut, but because of the way the contract is. But uh, I will say, this is my personal opinion. Don't think there's any chance that Anton Winfield Jr. is playing anywhere other than Tampa Bay. I have mentioned on multiple occasions that I actually think he should be their number one free agent priority. I actually think that he should be their number one basically, well, not really target, but their number one guy that they need to look at and get locked up. He's too good, he's too young, he's too valuable to that defense. And I love Mike Evans, but I do think Anton Winfield needs to be the top guy there. So don't have any worries about him. But I will say that, like you said, the other spots, right? Third corner, Zion McCollum, I thought played well, but I don't know if the upgrade there. If they move on from Carlton Davis, you need to find another cornerback. And then also, as far as the other safety that goes with Winfield, that's going to be a factor as well. So when you're looking at this in the future of guys like Carlton Davis, Jamal Dean, first off, what do you think of both of their seasons, the two starting corners? What do you think? I would say they both sort of had down years, but there were some good, but also some bad, especially for the money that they're making.
Yeah, I want to say this. I think it is much more likely the Bucs they're going to move on from potentially, if they do move on from one of them, they're not going to move on from both of them. Okay, because
Yes,
that
yeah,
would be
I would be shocked.
that'd be insane. And that would just be a horrible idea. Personally, I think Jamal Dean had the better season than Carlton Davis. To even say this, Evan, when Jamal Dean left that game against the Lions, it was noticeable,
Yes.
very noticeable. And Carlton Davis has done a great job for the Bucs. He really has, but it just seems like he is going to be more of the odd man out than Jamal Dean in this scenario. And that isn't to say that they are going to move on from one or the other. They could just very well decide to keep both of them. But if the Bucs did have to make a decision between the two, I am of the belief, and people may disagree with this, that they would prefer to keep a guy like Jamal Dean over a guy like Carlton Davis. And that isn't a big knock on Davis. I still think Davis is a great corner. 27 years old, still big, physical type of corner. Dean just has a little bit more to his game in terms of athleticism, even with the injuries he's suffered throughout his career. And that's another big thing as well, is availability. And really impact. And I think even this year you saw it. It was a bigger deal when Jamal Dean was out versus whenever Carlton Davis was out. But I mean, who knows? Like, again, they could keep both of those guys, and it wouldn't surprise me at all. But yes, I agree. Both corners definitely had some good moments, but also definitely a great number of, not a great number, but a healthy number of bad moments as well.
Yeah, I mean, they both need to learn how to catch the football, which I mean, at this point, they're not going to, right? I mean, who knows how that Detroit game goes if Jamal Dean catches that ball in the end zone right there?
Might have won.
Right? That first drive, right? Like, what a start that would have been for the Buccaneers defense. Who knows what would have happened there, but woulda, coulda, shoulda. I do think that you are right. I think if they were to move on from one of them, I think it should be, and I think it would be Carlton Davis. According to Over the Cap, if the Bucs were to cut Carlton Davis pre-Jew first and get that cap space, they would save, $6.3 million. So they would save a good chunk of change there that they could use to sign somebody else. But again, if you're cutting a player, you got to replace that player, and it would become a bigger need, right? Right now, I would say corner would be a luxury type of need, right? Would be if you can grab one, sure, but you're not like going out and it's not a pressing need. Whereas if you would move on from one of these guys, it would become that. So behind them, though, you got guys like Zion McCollum, you got guys who are kind of safety corner hybrids. D Delaney's done that a little bit. Josh Hayes has done that a little bit. Christian Izien even has done that a little bit for the Buccaneers. So behind Davis and Dean, right? What do you think about the depth of this group here?
I think it's better than people realize. I thought Zion McCollum had a very underrated year for the Bucks this year. I really do
He
believe
was,
that.
I think he was actually one of their, if not the most improved player.
Yes, I really genuinely do believe that. And some people may look and be like, "Oh, well, whenever he went to that Lions playoff game, he got picked on," and that was the case. But I also don't think that should take away from what McCollum did this year. He really did have a pretty solid year, all things considered. I think he's a solid, number three kind of outside backup cornerback. I say outside backup cornerback because you mentioned it. Christian Izien played in the slot a lot this year, and I think he did a pretty good job. He may get some opportunities at safety moving forward with Ryan Neal scheduled to be an unrestricted free agent. You also have Kayvon Merriweather in there as well, and D Delaney, who's obviously had to pull some duty as an outside corner and safety as well. So like I really am, of course, Josh Hayes, former, guy who's going to hopefully try and continue to develop. So this is a group that is again pretty solid. Now you could use another starting safety, but I think that if you were to go out yet again with a cornerback group of Jamal Dean, Carlton Davis, or Zion McCollum, and Christian Izien at the nickel, um, it's not a bad group, man. With Antoine Field Jr. back there as a safety, if you get another decent, you know, quality starting safety, you'd be looking at still a very good secondary group. So I agree with your point of this. This is cornerback specifically is more of a luxury, whereas safety, you probably need another starter in there.
Yeah, me personally, I would probably rather see them go out and sign a guy in free agency or draft one to play strong safety, whatever, box safety, whatever you want to call it, whatever role that may be, rather than try to have Zion McCollum play the slot and move Christian Izzy in there. Right? I would rather not try that experiment. I know Christian Izzy can play it a little bit, but I'd rather have that versatility and have two set stay safeties, right? So I know that a guy like Jordan Whitehead is a free agent, right? And Tampa fans and the Buccaneers themselves are very, very familiar with Jordan Whitehead. And could he be a fit? It all depends on how the money works out. But yeah, I mean, it could be a pretty solid secondary. I know the secondaries come under fire a lot. Even when the Bucs were really good, right? A lot of people were saying, "Oh, the secondary's trash, this and that." Like, I think what people have to realize, though, in today's NFL, with the rules and the passing league it is, you're just not going to have that shutdown secondary anymore. It's just not going to be there consistently game after game. And that's not the NFL anymore. I mean, there are very, very few shut down corners right now, right? I mean, it doesn't really exist. So with the way the game's played, I think the secondary gets a little bit too much hate. I think people's expectations for the secondary are raised a little too high at times. I do get the frustration though at times because it's warranted. Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean had legit phases, spurts, whatever you want to call it, of this season where they were not good. Like they were just simply not good. Anton Winfield, for the most part, was fantastic. Had a few lapses, but for the most part, was fantastic. Ryan Neal was a bust of a free agent signing. Like he's not going to be back, right? The Buccaneers then, after benching Neal, they were basically scrambling, having to play D. Delaney a lot of the time there. Had to sort of mix in a lot. Played Christian Ezien back there a little bit. Played Zion McCollum up at nickel. So yeah, they had to sort of figure it out on the fly. I think their best course of action would be to have a set safety tandem along with your set corners and just see how it goes. Injuries can always happen, obviously, but what are your thoughts on the Buccaneers sort of their plan of attack this offseason? Whereas do you think they'll maybe be a little bit aggressive and not, maybe I'm not saying, signing the biggest strong safety free agent on the market, but maybe a little bit more aggressive in trying to find that starter next to Winfield? Or do you think maybe they sign a depth guy and, see what Izzian has in training camp?
I would say it's strong safety. They've tried that process for the past couple of years, right? Like Keanu Neal
Mhm.
was in there, and
Keanu
then
Neal, they tried like the tandem of Neal and Ryan, and
yeah, like Neal, Ryan,
Ryan
um,
Neal, which when
r-
you put them together,
right? We don't know what's going on, but um, there's been a lot of um there's been a lot of rotating guys at that strong safety position. If you want me to be honest, I imagine it's going to continue. You're paying a lot of guys in that secondary, and I think that they're just going to try and get a solid guy, not break the bank for anybody, but just try and get a solid guy. Maybe they could draft somebody as well. And I want to say this too. You mentioned it earlier, folks. Guys deserve to be paid for a reason, right? Reason for that is because they're really good and they're not easy to replace. So to say Jamal Dean, Carlton Davis, or like especially in the case of Antoine Winfield Jr., like just let him go. We can find other guys. Not really. like it's you're not going to find another Antoine Winfield Jr. I'm sorry, you're not. You're gonna struggle mightily to find another Jamel Dean or another Carlton Davis.
this team legit might have won 4 games if it was for Anton Winfield Jr. this year. I'm not
Yeah,
kidding.
yeah.
I'm not kidding.
So I mean, like, it's not as simple as just saying like, whatever, don't pay anybody and just replace them. You've got to pay guys. I mean, you have all that money for a reason. So it's just something that I have noticed a lot in some of these things that we've done, where it's like people will talk about him like, just let him go. Who cares? Replace him. It's not that easy, man. So my point being with that is you're going to be paying a lot of guys. Don't know if they're going to necessarily have the money to go out and get a big name guy at strong safety or whatever. Like, they're not getting Jamal Adams, but
No.
I think that's safe to say.
Jamal Adams cooked. So
Yeah. So I mean, but point being is that they have a lot of money they have to throw at different positions. One of which is already keeping a big name safety in Antoine Field Jr.
and that's whether it's franchise tag or a long-term deal, that's going to be a big number.
That's a big number, and to me, it's just they have other resources they have to spend. Where I don't necessarily know if one starting safety position being not as up to snuff as Antoine Winfield Jr. or some of the cornerbacks is going to be the absolute end of the world, or would be the smartest thing to invest in.
Yeah, and one more thing I want to say before we wrap up. I said on the podcast a bunch. I think I've said it here a few times, but there's a difference between a bad football player and a good player playing bad. There is a difference between a bad player and a good player playing poorly. Like there's a difference. And I mean, you have 2 very obvious bounce back candidates here in Jamal Dean and Carlton Davis. You definitely do. Is there a chance that they couldn't? Absolutely. There could be a chance that this is kind of who they are and they're going to struggle again. And then the Buccaneers are definitely going to have to find, potentially 1 or 2 new corners in the 2025 offseason. But, I think they're pretty good bounce back candidates. And I don't think Carlton Davis's status with this team is locked in. I really don't. I think there's a real chance that he could be gone, just because you mentioned about how much they're paying guys, right? Think maybe you move those resources around a little bit. Maybe you do pay for the big time safety, right? To pair with Winfield. And then you draft the corner in the first or second round and have the cornerback, one of the corners on a cheap contract instead of the safety. Switch around your resources a little bit. But that's just an idea. There's going to be a lot of ideas thrown in this entire offseason. But with that being said, I want to thank you all for watching all these. I know it's a lot of videos, a lot of content. We appreciate you all for watching the content. Hope you're liking these videos that we've been trying to keep up with in the off season, trying to give you guys content each and every day, leading up to, right now it's kind of a dead period. There's not really much going on, especially now. Super Bowl's over. We have the combine coming up and then free agency, but this 2-week period pretty much is pretty quiet usually. So we will definitely be back with pods and also more videos like this in the future. But we appreciate you guys watching. And also want to thank James for being on for every single one. He doesn't have to do it. He's not getting paid for this. He's actually paying us to be on. So we appreciate the contribution to the Wendy's Fund. But I just want to thank James again for coming on here. And James, where can the people find you and your content?
Yeah, everything. It's Mr. Bucs Nation. YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. It's all Mr. Bucs Nation on there. So
if you can't find it, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, I mean, just don't try. Try for a little bit, and then if you can't find it, just give up. It's not a big deal. But yeah, no, happy to be here. Happy to make a lot of videos, and obviously there's going to be a lot more to talk about. So it's good stuff.
A lot more to talk about. So I want to get your thoughts on the secondary. What do you guys think about Carlton Davis, Jamal Dean, Antoine Winfield? Do you think they need to cut one of Davis or Dean? Do you think they need a new safety to pair with Winfield? Do you think I want to hear actually if you do think they should cut Carlton Davis or Jamal Dean, just like James and I said, you need to replace those players. Who would you replace them with? Would you draft one? Would you look to sign one? I'm always curious to hear, because a lot of people say, oh, just do this. I'm like, okay, do this. And then what? And then what are you going to do to counteract that? So always curious to hear it, but curious to hear you guys in the comment section below. Thank you all for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and go Bucs.